The massive warship hung in space like a dark metal mountain. Its hull stretched for miles, covered in weapon ports and shield generators that could level entire cities. This was the flagship of the Valorian Empire, and today it received a message that would change everything. Admiral Zekthor stood on the bridge, his 4 arms crossed behind his back. His purple skin gleamed under the ship's lights, and his 6 eyes focused on the holographic display floating before him. The message had come from the Galactic Council, those old races who claimed to keep peace in the galaxy. "Play it again," Zekthor commanded. His voice was deep and harsh, like grinding metal. The hologram flickered to life. A tall, graceful alien appeared. Her skin was pale blue, and her large eyes seemed to hold the wisdom of centuries. This was Ambassador Velnari, of the Thessian Collective, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. "Admiral Zekthor," the recording began, "the Galactic Council formally requests that the Valorian Empire abandon any plans to attack the Sol system. The species known as humans must not be disturbed." Zekthor snorted. Behind him, his officers shifted nervously. The Valorian Empire had conquered 17 star systems. They had crushed every enemy they faced. No one told them where they could or could not go. The recording continued. "We understand this may seem strange. The humans appear primitive. Their technology is basic. They still fight wars among themselves on their home planet. But Admiral, you must listen to us. These humans are not what they seem." One of Zekthor's officers, Commander Veldak, stepped forward. "Sir, shall I delete this message? It's clearly a waste of our time." "No," Zekthor said, his eyes still fixed on the hologram. "Let's hear what these cowards have to say." Ambassador Velnari's expression grew serious. "In our long history, we have encountered many species. Some were peaceful, others were warlike. But humans are different. They are apex predators, Admiral. Not just in body, but in mind. They think like hunters, they plan like hunters, and they never give up." Zekthor laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Apex predators? Have they seen our ships? Our weapons? We have antimatter cannons that can crack planets in half." The recording seemed to respond to his thoughts. "You will think your technology makes you superior. This is your first mistake. Humans don't fight with just weapons. They fight with their minds. They turn everything into a weapon. Their own weakness becomes strength. Their fear becomes fury." The Admiral waved a dismissive hand. "Show me their military strength. Show me their fleet." Another officer touched his control panel. New images appeared next to the ambassador's message. These showed Earth's space capabilities, a few orbital stations, some basic rockets, ships that could barely reach their own moon, weapons that used simple chemical explosives instead of plasma or antimatter. "This is what we're supposed to fear?" Zekthor asked his crew. "This is what the mighty Galactic Council warns us about?" But Ambassador Velnari wasn't finished. "Admiral, I'm going to show you something that few outside the Council have seen. These are classified recordings from human history." The hologram changed. Now it showed grainy footage of human soldiers in various conflicts throughout their history. Zekthor watched humans charging into gunfire. He saw them fighting in frozen wastelands and burning deserts. He watched them continue fighting even when wounded, even when outnumbered, even when victory seemed impossible. "Notice how they fight," Velnari's voice explained. "They don't just use weapons. They use everything. The environment, their enemies, own tactics, their willingness to die. Watch this human unit. They're surrounded. Outnumbered 10 to 1. Most species would surrender." The footage showed human soldiers trapped in a ruined building. Enemy forces had them completely surrounded. Instead of surrendering, the humans began using the rubble around them as weapons. They turned broken pipes into spears. They used debris to create traps. When their ammunition ran out, they fought with their bare hands. "They held that position for 3 days, Velnari continued. 3 days against impossible odds. When reinforcements finally arrived, they found that the humans had not only survived, but had actually captured several of their attackers." Zekthor frowned. This was unusual, but hardly impressive compared to Valorian military might. The ambassador's image returned. "This is not an isolated incident, Admiral. This is how humans always fight. They adapt. They improvise. They turn every disadvantage into an advantage. Do you know what they call this behavior? They call it Tuesday." "These are ancient recordings," Commander Veldak pointed out. "Primitive humans fighting with basic weapons. Our ships have shields that can stop nuclear explosions." "That's what the Kethvar Empire thought," Velnari said sadly. "And the Mordoon Confederacy, and the Zelnari war machine. All of them encountered humans during their early space exploration period. All of them made the same mistake you're about to make." Zekthor's 6 eyes narrowed. What mistake? They thought humans were primitive. They thought superior technology guaranteed victory. They underestimated the human capacity for strategic thinking. The ambassador paused. Admiral, humans have been studying warfare for their entire species' existence, not just fighting it, studying it. They analyze every battle, every strategy, every mistake. They learn from everything. New images appeared. These showed human military academies, where officers studied not just human tactics, but alien tactics. They had detailed files on every known species' fighting methods, including Valorian methods. They know how you fight, Admiral. They've been watching your campaigns for years. They know your battle formations, your standard strategies, your weaknesses. Zekthor's purple skin darkened with anger. Weaknesses? The Valorian Empire has no weaknesses. Every empire has weaknesses, Velnari replied gently. Humans excel at finding them. They have a saying, know your enemy and know yourself, and you need not fear the result of 100 battles. They've been knowing you, Admiral. The recording was almost finished. Ambassador Velnari's expression grew even more serious. I'm begging you, Admiral, don't attack Earth. Don't make the mistake of thinking humans are just another primitive species. They're not. They're something much more dangerous. What could be more dangerous than the Valorian fleet? Zekthor demanded. A species that's been planning for this war since the day they first detected your scout ships in their system 2 years ago. The hologram flickered and died. The bridge fell silent, except for the hum of the ship's engines. Zekthor stood motionless, thinking about what he had heard. Finally, Commander Veldak spoke. Sir, what are your orders? Zekthor turned to face his crew. His 6 eyes gleamed with determination and pride. The Galactic Council seeks to frighten us with stories of primitive humans. They show us ancient footage of desperate soldiers and claim this makes Earth dangerous. But they forget one thing. He gestured toward the tactical display showing the Valorian fleet. Over 200 warships, millions of soldiers, weapons that could destroy worlds. We are the Valorian Empire. We have conquered every enemy we've faced. Our technology is superior. Our tactics are proven. Our resolve is absolute. Zekthor's voice grew louder. If these humans are such great warriors, why do they still fight among themselves? Why haven't they united their own planet? Why do they still use chemical rockets to reach space? The crew murmured agreement. Their admiral was right. The Galactic Council was clearly trying to protect some weak species that couldn't protect itself. Set course for the Sol system, Zekthor commanded. Ready the fleet for standard invasion protocol. We'll show the galaxy what happens when primitive species refuse to bow before the Valorian Empire. As the massive warship began to turn toward Earth, Admiral Zekthor smiled. Soon the humans would learn what real power looked like, and the Galactic Council would learn not to waste his time with foolish warnings. He had no way of knowing that, at that very moment, General Sarah Chen was sitting in a bunker deep beneath the Colorado Mountains, watching his ship's movements on her screen and smiling as well. 3 months had passed since the Valorian fleet began its journey to Earth. During this time, something remarkable happened on the small blue planet. The nations that had fought each other for centuries suddenly put aside their differences. Wars stopped. Borders became meaningless. Old enemies became allies overnight. The world leaders called it the Unified Defense Council. Every nation sent their best military minds to join this new organization. They had one goal: prepare for the coming invasion. Deep in the command bunker beneath Cheyenne Mountain, General Sarah Chen stood before a massive holographic display. The display showed the solar system, with tiny dots representing human ships and installations scattered throughout space. To any outside observer, it looked pitiful compared to the approaching Valorian armada. "General," called Colonel Martinez from his station, "we're receiving the Valorian ultimatum." "Put it on the main screen," Chen ordered. The hologram shifted to show Admiral Zekthor's imposing figure. His purple skin seemed to glow with arrogance as he delivered his message. "Primitive humans of Earth," the Admiral began, his voice echoing through the command center. "I am Admiral Zekthor of the Valorian Empire. Your pathetic world has exactly 72 hours to surrender unconditionally. Lay down your weapons. Abandon your ships. Prepare to serve the Empire." The Admiral paused, his 6 eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "If you refuse, we will demonstrate why 17 star systems kneel before Valorian might. Your cities will burn. Your population will serve as laborers in our mines. Your planet will become another jewel in the Empire's crown." The message ended. The command center fell silent. Then, slowly, General Chen began to smile. "Colonel Martinez," she said calmly. "Send a response to the Admiral. Tell him we accept his terms." The entire command center erupted in shocked voices. Officers turned to stare at their commander. Had she lost her mind? Chen raised her hand for silence. "Tell him we wish to arrange a formal surrender ceremony, one fitting for such a great empire. We propose meeting in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. We've prepared a suitable location for the transfer of power." Colonel Martinez hesitated. "General, are you sure about this?" "Absolutely." Chen's smile grew wider. "Include detailed scans of our asteroid mining operations. Show them our pitiful space installations. Make sure they see how outmatched we are." As Martinez began preparing the message, Chen turned to address her staff. "Ladies and gentlemen, activate Protocol Endgame. Send the signal to all stations. It's time to show our guests what human hospitality really means." Throughout the solar system, hidden installations came to life. What the Valorians had observed as simple mining operations were actually something much more dangerous. For months, human engineers had been working around the clock, turning the asteroid belt into the galaxy's most elaborate trap. They had hollowed out hundreds of asteroids, installing everything from nuclear weapons to railgun batteries inside them. The asteroids looked completely natural from the outside, but each one was actually a hidden weapons platform. Advanced camouflage technology made them invisible to standard military scanners. The plan was brilliant in its simplicity. The Valorians expected humanity to either surrender immediately or put up a desperate fight near Earth. They would never expect humans to voluntarily lure them into an ambush in the asteroid belt. Dr. Elizabeth Hawkins, the project's chief engineer, explained the setup to General Chen as they reviewed the final preparations. "We've got over 300 modified asteroids in position," Dr. Hawkins reported. "Each one contains enough firepower to take out a Valorian cruiser. The nuclear mines are positioned throughout the debris field. When they detonate, they'll create a chaos storm that will blind their sensors and break up their formation." "What about their shields?" Chen asked. "That's the beauty of it," Hawkins grinned. "Their shields are designed to stop directed energy, weapons and missiles. They're not meant to handle thousands of pieces of high-velocity debris hitting them at once. It's like using an umbrella to stop a hurricane." The response from Admiral Zekthor came faster than expected. The Valorian commander was clearly pleased by humanity's apparent cowardice. "Wise decision, humans," his message began. "The Valorian Empire accepts your surrender. We will arrive at your proposed coordinates in 6 days. Have your leadership prepared to formally transfer control of your world to us." The Admiral paused, and his expression became even more arrogant. "Your quick submission proves that the Galactic Council's warnings about human resistance were greatly exaggerated. You understand, as any intelligent species should, that resistance to the Empire is futile." What Admiral Zekthor didn't mention in his message was his real reason for accepting the human proposal. He wanted the entire Valorian fleet to witness humanity's surrender. The Galactic Council had claimed humans were dangerous. By forcing them to surrender publicly, he would prove once and for all that the old races were weak and foolish. His officers had suggested bringing only a small diplomatic ship to accept the surrender, but Zekthor refused. He wanted maximum impact. He wanted the galaxy to see the full might of the Valorian Armada as humanity kneeled before it. "Sir," Commander Veldak had said during the planning session, "bringing the entire fleet seems like overkill for a surrender ceremony." "Exactly," Zekthor replied. "Overkill sends a message. When word spreads that even the Council's dangerous humans surrendered without firing a shot, no other species will dare resist us." On Earth, General Chen watched the Valorian response with satisfaction. Everything was going according to plan. The Admiral's ego was working exactly as the human psychologists had predicted. For over a year, Earth's best minds had been studying Valorian culture and military doctrine. They had analyzed every battle the Empire had fought. They had identified patterns in Valorian thinking. Most importantly, they had identified the Empire's greatest weakness, their arrogance. "The Valorians always use the same strategy," explained Dr. James Foster, the team's xenopsychologist. "Overwhelming force combined with psychological intimidation. They bring their entire fleet to every battle, not because they need to, but because they want to terrify their enemies into surrendering. So we give them what they want," Chen had replied during the planning phase. "We act terrified. We surrender. We invite them to bring their entire fleet to witness our submission." "And then?" Dr. Foster had asked. "Then we show them why the Galactic Council was right to warn them about us." Now, as the final preparations began, Chen felt a mixture of excitement and grim determination. The next few days would determine the fate of humanity. Either their plan would work, or the Earth would burn. But she had faith in her species. Humans had always been at their best when facing impossible odds. They had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that would have destroyed other species. They had climbed out of caves and reached for the stars. Now the stars were coming to them, and humanity was ready. The asteroid belt mining stations began their final preparations. What looked like simple industrial operations were actually the most sophisticated military trap ever constructed. Hidden weapons powered up, camouflaged sensors tracked the approaching Valorian fleet. Nuclear mines were armed and positioned. In space stations throughout the solar system, human crews made their final preparations. Many of them would not survive the coming battle. They knew this. They accepted it, because they also knew that their sacrifice would protect not just Earth, but every free species in the galaxy. General Chen stood before the holographic display one last time before the Valorians arrived. The asteroid belt looked peaceful and empty, perfect for a surrender ceremony. "Colonel Martinez," she said quietly, "send a final message to all stations. Remind them that we're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting for the right of every species to remain free." She paused, looking out at the stars through the bunker's reinforced windows. "Tell them that humanity keeps its promises. We promised the Galactic Council we would stop the Valorian Empire. We promised our children we would protect their future. We promised ourselves we would never kneel to tyrants." She turned back to her staff, her eyes hard as steel. "Tomorrow, we keep those promises." The Valorian fleet emerged from hyperspace like a dark storm cloud. Over 200 warships spread across the asteroid belt in their traditional battle formation. Each ship was a monument to the Empire's power, bristling with weapons and glowing with shield energy. Admiral Zekthor stood on his flagship's bridge, admiring the sight of his armada. The formation was designed for maximum psychological impact. The smaller ships formed a protective wall, while the massive dreadnoughts loomed behind them like sleeping giants. At the center, his own flagship dominated the formation like a dark throne. "Perfect positioning," he told Commander Veldak. "When the humans see this, they'll remember why surrender was their only option." The asteroid belt around them seemed peaceful and empty. Chunks of rock drifted slowly through space, just as they had for millions of years. The Valorian sensors detected the human mining stations exactly where the surrender message had indicated they would be. "Sir," reported the sensor officer, "I'm reading the human delegation. Single ship, minimal weapons, approaching on schedule." On the main screen, a small human vessel appeared. It was barely larger than a Valorian shuttle, painted white with peaceful markings. The ship moved slowly and carefully, broadcasting surrender codes on all frequencies. Zekthor smiled with all 6 eyes. This was exactly what he had expected. The mighty humans, who had supposedly terrified the Galactic Council, were approaching in a ship that couldn't threaten a Valorian cargo hauler. "Open a channel," he commanded. "Let's hear their formal surrender." The screen flickered, and a human face appeared. It was an older woman with gray hair and calm eyes. She wore a simple military uniform with no visible weapons. "I am General Sarah Chen of the Unified Defense Council," she said in accented but clear Valorian. "I come to formally surrender Earth and all human territories to the glorious Valorian Empire." Zekthor leaned back in his command chair, savoring the moment. Behind him, his officers recorded everything for transmission to Valorian High Command and the Galactic Council. "You have chosen wisely, General Chen," the Admiral replied. "The Empire acknowledges your surrender. You will now transfer all military, codes, and planetary defense information to my staff." Chen nodded respectfully. "Of course, Admiral. But first, if I may, I would like to speak about the great honor of surrendering to such a magnificent fleet. Your formation is truly impressive. The way your ships dominate this space shows why resistance would have been impossible." Zekthor's chest swelled with pride. Even in defeat, the humans recognized Valorian superiority. Chen continued speaking, her voice growing slightly louder. "Your tactical positioning is perfect. Your ships are exactly where they need to be for maximum effect. In fact, Admiral, I would say your formation is so perfect that it's almost like you're exactly where we expected you to be." Something in her tone made Zekthor frown. There was an odd emphasis on her last words. Before he could ask what she meant, Chen smiled. "Protocol Endgame is now active." For a moment, nothing happened. The asteroid belt remained peaceful. The human ship continued to drift quietly nearby. Then, suddenly, space exploded. The first sign of trouble came from the asteroids themselves. What the Valorians had assumed were simple chunks of rock suddenly split open like flowers blooming in reverse. From inside each one, weapon platforms emerged. Railgun batteries, missile launchers, and plasma cannons appeared where moments before there had been only empty stone. "What is this?" Zekthor roared, but his question was answered by the first volley of fire. Hundreds of weapons opened fire simultaneously. The asteroid belt lit up like a deadly fireworks display as hidden platforms revealed themselves throughout. The debris field. The Valorian shields, designed to stop conventional weapons, suddenly found themselves under attack from directions they had never expected. But the weapons were only the beginning. Deep inside dozens of asteroids, nuclear charges detonated in carefully planned sequences. The explosions didn't target the Valorian ships directly. Instead, they shattered asteroids into millions of high-velocity fragments. The result was chaos, beyond anything the Valorians had ever experienced. Their sensors, designed to track ships and missiles, couldn't handle the sudden storm of debris. Their targeting systems, programmed for conventional space warfare, became useless in the swirling cloud of rock fragments. "Shields failing on the starboard flank!" Someone shouted over the alarms. "Debris impact on Deck 7! We're losing main sensor array!" Admiral Zekthor watched in horror as his perfect formation disintegrated. Ships collided with each other as they tried to maneuver through the debris storm. The tight formation that was supposed to intimidate the humans had become a liability, making his ships easy targets for the hidden weapons. On the communication screen, General Chen's face remained calm. "Welcome to Earth, Admiral. We've been preparing for you since the first human looked up at the stars and decided we belonged there." "This is impossible," Zekthor snarled. "Your technology is primitive. Your weapons are basic." Chen's smile grew wider. "You're absolutely right, Admiral. Our technology is basic. That's why we didn't try to match your plasma cannons and antimatter bombs. Instead, we use simple nuclear explosives and kinetic energy weapons. Sometimes the old ways work best." A massive piece of debris slammed into the flagship's shield, causing the entire ship to shudder. The Admiral grabbed his command chair to steady himself. "You cannot defeat the Valorian Empire with rocks and explosions," he shouted. "We're not trying to defeat you with rocks and explosions," Chen replied, calmly. "We're defeating you with something much more dangerous. We're defeating you with intelligence." As if to prove her point, the hidden weapons began firing in coordinated patterns. Instead of random shooting, the platforms worked together like parts of a single massive weapon. They herded the Valorian ships into specific areas where the debris was thickest. They targeted shield generators and sensor arrays first, leaving the ships blind and vulnerable. "Sir!" Commander Veldak called out. "They're not firing randomly. They know our ship designs. They're targeting our weaknesses." Zekthor's blood ran cold. The human weapons were precisely targeting the vulnerable points of Valorian ships. Points that were classified military secrets. Points that only someone with detailed knowledge of Valorian technology would know about. "How do they know our ship specifications?" he demanded. On the screen, Chen heard his question and answered it. "We've been watching you for years, Admiral. Every battle you fought, every tactic you used, every weakness you revealed. The Galactic Council wasn't the only one studying your methods." The Admiral realized with growing horror that the humans had been planning this trap for much longer than he had imagined. They hadn't just hidden weapons in the asteroids. They had studied Valorian psychology to predict exactly where the fleet would position itself. They had analyzed Valorian tactics to know how the ships would react under attack. This entire surrender was a lie, he whispered. "Not a lie," Chen corrected. "An invitation. We invited you to bring your entire fleet to the one place in the solar system where we had the best chance of destroying it. You accepted our invitation because your arrogance made it impossible for you to consider that primitive humans might be smarter than you." More alarms sounded throughout the ship. The flagship shields were failing under the constant bombardment of debris and directed weapons fire. Around them, other Valorian ships were suffering the same fate. "Emergency retreat," Zekthor ordered. "All ships, withdraw immediately." But retreat was easier ordered than accomplished. The debris storm had spread throughout the area, making hyperspace jumps impossible. The hidden weapons continued their coordinated assault, targeting any ship that tried to break free of the trap. Worse still, small human fighters began emerging from hidden positions throughout the asteroid field. These tiny ships should have been easy targets for Valorian weapons, but they moved through the debris with impossible skill. Their pilots seemed to know exactly where every piece of rock would be, dodging and weaving through the chaos like they had been flying in asteroid fields their entire lives. How are they doing that? Veldak wondered aloud. Chen's voice provided the answer. "Our pilots have been training in this debris field for months, Admiral. They know every rock, every hiding place, every safe passage. This isn't just their battlefield, it's their home." The human fighters swarmed the larger Valorian ships like angry insects. Their weapons were indeed primitive compared to Valorian technology, but they didn't need advanced weapons. They targeted critical systems with surgical precision. Engine, ports, sensor clusters, shield generators. But most terrifying of all was their complete disregard for their own safety. Zekthor watched in shock as human pilots deliberately crashed their fighters into Valorian ships, sacrificing themselves. To cause maximum damage, they're suicide attackers, someone said in disbelief. No, Chen's voice corrected. They're heroes. They're dying to protect their families and their freedom. Can you say the same about your soldiers, Admiral? The question hit harder than any weapon. Valorian soldiers fought for conquest and glory. They expected to survive and enjoy the rewards of victory. But these humans were fighting for something different, something that made them willing to die without hesitation. As the battle raged around him, Admiral Zekthor began to understand what the battle in the asteroid belt raged for 6 hours. When it finally ended, less than 30 Valorian ships remained from the original fleet of over 200. Admiral Zekthor's flagship limped through space, its hull cracked and its shields failing. Around him, the debris field was now filled with the wreckage of what had once been the most powerful military force in the galaxy. But the true horror was only beginning. "Sir," Commander Veldak reported, his voice shaking, "we're receiving emergency transmissions from the home fleet." Zekthor, nursing wounds from when a debris impact had thrown him across the bridge, looked up with his remaining functional eyes. "What kind of transmissions?" "Admiral!" came a panicked voice over the communication system. "This is Fleet Commander Morthak at Valoria Prime. We're under attack. Human ships appeared out of nowhere and struck our orbital defense platforms. How is this possible? Their fleet was supposed to be primitive." Zekthor felt his blood freeze. What human ships? Their entire fleet was in the Sol system. But even as he asked the question, more transmissions began flooding in from across Valorian space. Every major military installation, every key industrial, world, every strategic outpost was reporting the same thing. Surprise attacks by human forces. "This is impossible," Veldak whispered. "We monitored their space capabilities for months. They barely had enough ships to defend their own planet." On the communication screen, General Chen's face reappeared. Her ship had somehow survived the Beats battle unharmed, hidden among the asteroids while the Valorian fleet destroyed itself in the debris storm. "Confused, Admiral?" she asked pleasantly. "Let me explain what's happening to your empire." A new holographic display appeared beside Chen's image. It showed a map of Valorian space, with red indicators appearing at dozens of locations. "For the past 5 years," Chen continued, "while you were busy conquering new territories, we've been sending ships to yours. Not warships, Admiral. Cargo ships, passenger ships, survey vessels, ships so ordinary and harmless that your patrols never gave them a second look." Zekthor stared at the display in growing horror. The red indicators were spreading across the map like a disease. Each ship carried a small crew of volunteers, Chen explained, engineers mostly, along with some very special cargo. They positioned themselves near your major installations and waited. Some waited for years, Admiral, living in deep space, eating recycled food, breathing recycled air. All for this moment. "Sleeper ships," Veldak breathed. "They positioned sleeper ships throughout our territory." "Exactly," Chen smiled. "While you were watching our primitive fleet in the Sol system, our real attack force was already in position around every important target in your empire. They've been waiting for my signal." More transmissions flooded in from across Valorian space. The attacks weren't random raids. They were coordinated strikes designed to cripple the Empire's ability to respond. Communication hubs went dark, supply depots exploded, shipyards burned. But the most important targets, Chen continued, were your hyperspace relay stations. Zekthor's 4 hearts seemed to stop beating. The hyperspace relay stations allowed rapid communication and travel across the Empire. Without them, his territories would be isolated from each other, unable to coordinate their defenses. "You're cutting us off from each other," he realized. "We're doing more than that," Chen replied. "We're liberating your slaves." The holographic display changed again. Now it showed Valorian territory, but the conquered worlds were lighting up with different colors. Green for successful revolts, blue for worlds declaring independence, yellow for worlds switching sides entirely. "You see, Admiral, your empire had a fatal weakness. You ruled through fear and oppression. Your conquered peoples hated you. All they needed was hope that resistance was possible." As if to prove her point, a new transmission came through. This one was from the HFY system. one of the Empire's earliest conquests. Admiral Zekthor, the message began. This is Commander Velthara of the Free Kethvar Defense Force. Our world declares its independence from the Valorian Empire. We have allied with the human forces and will defend our freedom with our lives. Similar messages began coming from worlds across the Empire. Species that had been conquered decades ago were suddenly rising up. Their rebellions coordinated with the human attacks. How? Zekthor demanded. How did you coordinate with our conquered worlds? Chen's expression grew serious. Because we didn't come to your galaxy as conquerors, Admiral. We came as liberators. For years, we've been secretly communicating with resistance movements throughout your territory. We offered them something you never could. What? Hope. And more importantly, proof that the Valorian Empire could be defeated. The Admiral looked around his ruined bridge. Emergency lights flickered red. Smoke drifted from damaged control panels. His crew moved like ghosts, their confidence shattered along with their fleet. Your technology, he said weakly. Your weapons were primitive. How did you— Our weapons were primitive, Chen agreed. But our thinking wasn't. You made the classic mistake of every bully in history, Admiral. You assumed that superior strength guaranteed victory. You never considered that weaker opponents might be smarter. She leaned forward, her calm expression never changing. Do you know what humans call it when a smaller force defeats a larger one through intelligence and planning? We call it Tuesday. More reports came in. The Valorian Empire was collapsing faster than anyone could have imagined. Cut off from central command, isolated by the destruction of the relay stations, and facing coordinated rebellions, the individual Valorian fleets found themselves fighting desperate defensive actions instead of maintaining their conquests. This was never about just stopping your invasion of Earth, Chen explained. This was about ending your empire entirely. Every species you conquered, every world you enslaved, every family you destroyed, they all deserve justice. But you're just one species, Veldak protested. One primitive world. How could you possibly coordinate something this massive? Because we're not just one species anymore, Chen replied. We're part of something bigger. The Galactic Council didn't just warn you about humans, Admiral. They recruited us. The truth hit Zekthor like a physical blow. The Council planned this. The Council gave us information and resources, yes, but the plan was entirely human. You see, Admiral, when the Council first contacted us, they didn't ask us to join them as junior members. They asked us to solve their Valorian problem. She gestured to the tactical display showing the collapsing empire. Consider it solved. The flagship shuddered as another piece of debris impacted the hull. The ship was dying around them, just like the empire it represented. What happens now? Zekthor asked quietly. Now you have a choice, Chen replied. You can continue fighting and watch your remaining ships get destroyed one by one, or you can surrender and spend the rest of your life helping to rebuild the worlds your empire damaged. The Admiral looked at his surviving crew. They stared back at him with hollow eyes, waiting for his decision. Behind them, the viewports showed the debris field where the mighty Valorian fleet had died. If we surrender, he asked, what guarantee do we have that you won't simply execute us? Chen's expression softened slightly. Admiral, humans don't execute prisoners of war. We believe in justice, not vengeance. You'll face trial for your crimes, but you'll live. More importantly, your surviving crews will live. She paused, letting that sink in. But if you choose to keep fighting, I can't guarantee anyone's survival. This is your only chance, Admiral. Take it. Zekthor closed his 6 eyes and thought about the empire he had served his entire life. It was gone. Destroyed not by superior firepower, but by superior planning. Defeated not by stronger enemies, but by smarter ones. When he opened his eyes again, his decision was made. All Valorian ships, he said into his communicator. This is Admiral Zekthor. Cease all hostile actions, power down weapons, and prepare to surrender. The words tasted like poison in his mouth, but they were the only words that could save his remaining crew. On the screen, General Chen nodded respectfully. A wise decision, Admiral. History will remember that you chose to save lives rather than continue a pointless fight. As the surviving Valorian ships powered down their weapons, Zekthor realized that the humans had taught him one final lesson. True strength wasn't about having the biggest fleet or the most powerful weapons. True strength was knowing when to use them and, more importantly, when not to. 6 months after the Battle of the Asteroid Belt, the Great Hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from hundreds of species had gathered for the most important session in the Council's history. The Valorian Empire was gone, its territories now free, and the galaxy needed to decide what came next. General Sarah Chen walked calmly through the massive chamber, her simple human military uniform standing out among the elaborate robes and ceremonial armor worn by the other delegates. Conversation stopped as she passed. Some species looked at her with fear, others with curiosity, a few with something approaching awe. The humans had done the impossible. They had ended a galactic empire in a single day. Ambassador Velnari of the Thessian collective stood at her usual place near the council's central platform. Her pale blue face showed a mixture of relief and concern as she watched the human general approach. "General Chen," Velnari said formally, "the council recognizes the representative of Earth and the human species." Chen stepped up to the speaking platform and looked out at the assembled delegates. Hundreds of different eyes stared back at her, representing civilizations that had existed for thousands of years longer than humanity. Yet here she stood, speaking for the species that had just reshaped the galaxy. "Honored delegates," Chen began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. 6 months ago, the Valorian Empire controlled 17 star systems and threatened to conquer more. Today, those systems are free. The Empire's military is disbanded. Their leadership awaits trial for crimes against galactic civilization. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Some species had lost entire worlds to Valorian conquest. The idea that justice might finally be possible was almost too much to believe. "But," Chen continued, raising her voice slightly, "we are not here to celebrate victory. We are here to prevent future tragedies. The Valorian Empire rose to power because the galaxy was not prepared to stop them. We cannot allow that to happen again." She touched a control panel, and a holographic display appeared above the platform. It showed the current state of former Valorian territory. Green indicators marked worlds that had successfully transitioned to independence. Yellow indicators showed worlds still recovering from decades of occupation. Red indicators marked a few worlds where violence continued. "The end of the Empire has created both opportunities and problems," Chen explained. "Some worlds have thrived in their new freedom. Others struggle with the chaos left behind. A few have descended into civil war as different factions fight for control." Ambassador Velnari nodded gravely. "This is why the Council requested this emergency session. The galaxy needs stability, but we lack the military force to maintain peace throughout former Valorian space. Which brings us to why we're really here," Chen said. "The Council has asked humanity to take a permanent seat on the governing body. They want us to become the galaxy's police force." The chamber fell completely silent. This was the question that had dominated galactic politics for months. Humanity had proven they could destroy empires. But could they be trusted with power? Chen let the silence stretch for a moment before continuing. "Many of you are wondering if we'll become the next Valorian Empire, if we'll use our military success to start conquering worlds ourselves. It's a fair question." She gestured to the holographic display. "Let me show you our answer." The display changed to show human ships throughout the galaxy, but instead of conquest fleets, the image showed something different. Human vessels were stationed at former Valorian worlds, but they were working alongside local forces, not ruling them. "We could have claimed Valorian territory for ourselves," Chen said. "Earth could have become the center of a new human empire. Instead, we're helping former Valorian colonies build their own governments. We're training their defense forces. We're sharing our technology with them." A delegate from the Morden system stood up. "But why? Your species proved it has the strength to rule. Why give that up?" Chen smiled. "Because ruling through strength isn't really ruling at all. It's just delayed rebellion. The Valorians learned that lesson the hard way." She touched the control panel again. The display now showed human training facilities on dozens of worlds. Former enemies worked alongside human instructors, learning new ways to defend themselves. Humans believe that true security comes from having strong allies, not conquered subjects. We're not teaching these worlds to follow Earth. We're teaching them to protect themselves. Another delegate, this one from the Kethvar Liberation Front, rose to speak. "The humans liberated our world and asked for nothing in return. They helped us rebuild our defenses and then left us to govern ourselves. This is not the behavior of conquerors, but it is the behavior of a species that understands something the Valorians never did," Chen replied. "Peace maintained by fear is not really peace. It's just a pause between wars." Ambassador Velnari stepped forward. "General Chen, the Council has reviewed humanity's actions over the past 6 months. Your species has indeed acted with remarkable restraint, but the galaxy faces new threats. Pirates operate in former Valorian space. Some worlds are developing their own expansionist ideas. How can humanity help maintain peace without becoming an empire yourselves? Chen had been expecting this question. It was the heart of everything that would follow. We propose the creation of the Galactic Defense Alliance, she announced. Not an empire ruled from one world, but a partnership of free species working together for mutual protection. The holographic display shifted again, showing a new organizational chart. Instead of a pyramid with one species at the top, it showed a network of interconnected worlds. Every member species would contribute according to their abilities, Chen explained. Some worlds have strong militaries, others have advanced technology, some have strategic locations, others have resources. All contributions would be valued equally. And who would lead this alliance? Asked a delegate from the Zelnari Confederation. No one, Chen replied. And everyone. Leadership would rotate based on expertise and need. If the galaxy faces a military threat, species with strong defense capabilities would take the lead. If the challenge is diplomatic, then the best negotiators would guide the response. The chamber erupted in discussion as delegates debated among themselves. The idea was radical. Most galactic governments were hierarchical, with clear chains of command. The human proposal suggested something entirely different. Ambassador Velnari called for order. General Chen, this alliance you propose sounds idealistic, but how would it work in practice? How would decisions be made without a central authority? The same way humans made the decision to fight the Valorian Empire, Chen answered. Through cooperation and shared purpose. When Earth was threatened, our species put aside centuries of conflict to work together. We believe the galaxy can do the same. She paused, looking out at the assembled delegates. But we won't force anyone to join. The alliance will be voluntary. Species that want to remain isolated are free to do so. Species that want to join will be welcomed as equals. A new voice spoke from the back of the chamber. Admiral Zekthor, former commander of the Valorian fleet, stood at a prisoner's dock where he was attending the session as part of his trial proceedings. May I speak? He asked quietly. Velnari looked uncertain, but Chen nodded. The Admiral may speak. Zekthor stepped forward, his once proud bearing now humble and broken. Honored delegates, I have spent the last 6 months in human custody. I have seen how they treat their prisoners, how they treat their former enemies. They could have executed me and my officers. Instead, they gave us trials, fair trials. Paused, looking directly at Chen. More importantly, I have watched how they interact with the worlds they liberated. The humans speak the truth. They do not seek to rule. They seek to serve. The Admiral's words carried weight because of who he was. If the former leader of the Valorian military could endorse human intentions, perhaps the galaxy could trust them. The Valorian Empire fell because we believed strength was everything, Zekthor continued. We thought superior weapons and larger fleets guaranteed victory. The humans taught us that wisdom is stronger than weapons. Unity is stronger than conquest. He turned to address the entire assembly. I urge the Council to accept the human proposal, not because they are strong, but because they are wise. Not because they can destroy empires, but because they can build something better. The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. One by one, species announced their intention to join the new alliance. Not out of fear, but out of hope. When the final vote was called, it was unanimous. The Galactic Defense Alliance was born. As the session ended and delegates began filing out of the chamber, Ambassador Velnari approached General Chen. You realize what you've done, don't you? The Thessian asked. You've changed the entire structure of galactic civilization. Chen nodded thoughtfully. We've given it a chance to change itself. Whether it succeeds or fails will depend on all of us working together. And if it fails? If some species decide they prefer the old ways of conquest and empire? Chen's expression grew serious. Then they'll learn what the Valorians learned, that humanity keeps its promises. We promise to protect the weak and defend the free. We'll keep that promise no matter what it costs us. Velnari studied the human general's face. After all the